Today we are recording a rather unique episode of our podcast. We will be taking our conversation online and using Zoom to connect with our guests in order to all stay at home. So joining us today is Professor Ji Ding from Peking University Health Sciences Centre. This was the first hospital in Beijing with whom Manchester has a close collaboration with around genetic disease and genomic medicine. We are looking forward to talking around connecting families, healthcare, and what does the future look like through this rare time. We also have listening, and will be taking part later, Professor Tao Wang and Professor Lauren Kerzin-Storrar, and our fellow team member Jay Roche.
First of all, it's my great honor to wear the podcast to talk with all of you. Some of you or most of you, we already know each other. So maybe you only, but anyway, nice to meet you. Nice to meet you, and nice to talk to all of you. And my name is Jay Ding, as you know, and I'm a pediatric nephrologist, and I'm involving in genetic disease as well as rare disease. That's because almost 10 years ago, in that time, a lot of Chinese doctors pay attention to rare disease, and they come to me and ask me, can I put some effort on rare disease? So almost 10, maybe more than 10 years ago, I just know the rare disease. And when I learn something about rare disease, I know, Alport syndrome is one of the rare kidney disease. And then I put a lot of effort on the rare disease. I set up the Society of Rare Disease. It's a Beijing branch in Beijing, and also do a lot of work the national-wide to push on the rare disease. As you know, the rare disease is not only the diagnosis and treatment, there's also a lot of health policy improvement, something like that, and also including the genetic counseling, something like that.
Thank you. That was great.
Okay.
And I think Mary Angels had a question in between.
Yeah, I was. You kind of told us a bit the story of your interest in Alport syndrome and also how you came about to be working in this rare genetic condition. And you told us that it was the other way around. It was that you discovered that it was a rare genetic condition. But just I'm wondering how about I'm a psychologist, so I'm interested in the psychosocial impact of this rare condition in the people and the patients you see and the families you see, but maybe also to the colleagues and professionals that are seeing this in a medical context.
I think it's a very important issue for the rare disease families and also the children. I think it's important on the psychology. And actually, maybe I can tell you some real things. One thing is when I to see the patient, especially the adolescent patient and also the boy patient. The boy, usually they don't want to talk too much. So I still remember one of the boy, I think in that time he was maybe 13 years old, and the parents so anxious to come to my clinic, and they asked me to say, I don't want my children, my child to come. I would like to talk to you. And nowadays, the child don't want to take medicine, and they don't want to go to school, and just sit home, don't talk to the other people, and I don't know what he's thinking. Yeah. And I asked them, how about you next time you bring him come to my clinic, and I talk to the child, person to person, not like the parent sit down for a while. And the child tell me the truth. He feel he is so unlucky because he always take medicine. And he asked me, am I dying? You know what I mean? And what time I will be die, something like that. And then I tell him what is the nature of the disease and what's the outcome, what's the progress, and why you take medicine, something like that. And I remember a couple of months ago, in a couple of months, the parent come to tell me, oh, the child get, much better. And actually, after he know the truth, he get much better than before. Before the parent try to cover the truth, just to tell them, oh, it's just some disease. You just take some medicine, later on you will be better, something like that.
I think we're definitely perhaps a little bit further ahead, but I think we're still in similar situations sometimes with parents creating their own narrative for their children with a rare disease or a rare condition, and their children growing up hearing that, and that sets their children's expectations, it sets their children's standard of living, and it's actually so important that they get I think the truth is really important. And I also think getting kind of psychologists, definitely, and then role models that have the condition, that are older, that they can see how they've coped throughout their life with that rare disease. I think that's also really important. It was for me when I was younger to see other people living with a condition and going, oh, well, they're doing it and they're okay, and they went through some tough times, but they're okay now. And I think separating sometimes children from their parents' narrative is really important, so that they can explore how they feel about it. And that will change at different times, I think, too.
Yeah. Can I say something also? I think we said psychosocial because I think we will go back to that to ask you your ideas also in that later on. But we are living in a very particular circumstances now with this COVID-19. And we are seeing that the media, for instance, are telling a bigger story. And I'm seeing children that they had experienced death, for instance, in the family, that now they're living with maybe a parent who passed away already and another parent that might have the COVID-19 at this stage. And the influence of the messages that we are hearing from outside, not only from the family, as you were saying, Nick, but also the media, the message we hear about rare or about an illness can have a very big impact in all of us, but in children especially.
No, I think that's right. And I think particularly now that other people, I'm reading a lot that other people are experiencing what people with rare diseases experience every day. And now other people that have never had a rare disease are kind of experiencing that same psychosocial kind of impact of being isolated, people reacting to them differently than they would normally, and I think that's really interesting that as a society at the moment, that everyone's going through a similar thing that can kind of parallel with how people sometimes feel that have a rare condition.
But before we go to that, I think it'd be interesting to know a little bit more from Eugene about the connection with Manchester.
And we know in Manchester, the genetics is very good, and you already have a long history on the genetic counseling in Europe and also in the worldwide. It's very famous. And also in China, we have a large population, and we know we should have a lot of different kind of the genetic disease. And in nowadays, to make the general diagnosis for genetic disease, maybe it's not too hard in Chinese people. However, after you make the diagnosis, you need to provide better service to the patient and also the family. So we think the genetic counseling is very important. Unfortunately, in China, in medical education, whatever in the medical student, or maybe after they graduate in the continual medical education, I think we are too short on the genetic counseling. So we need those kind of the education and those kind of the training to let us the doctor to know. Because in China, I think especially in current situation, maybe we need to train the doctor to be as the genetic counselors, not like you maybe can from the very basic education to get some students to involve in. But in China, maybe now we need to first to educate some doctors, and then the doctors maybe in the later on to become the trainer and to train the trainee in the future. So that's why we need your help to do the training course.
And what difference do you think that will make for the patients if incorporating that kind of genetic counseling with the doctors? What difference do you think that will make?
You mean the differences
in the patient, in how they're receiving, in how the patients are receiving information or care? If the doctors are trained with those genetic counselor skills, how much of a difference do you think that will make for the patients?
There's a much of difference. If you didn't give those kind of the surveys, the patient just know, they get a genetic disease. There's no cure method. They were so sad. They think they just sit down to sit for the end of the life. If you give them a good genetic counseling, they at least they know what's the outcome, and also especially they know for the next children, if they give birth, or maybe the next generation, and how they make a good family plan. I think that's important. Yeah. For example, let me give you an example. For example, the Alport syndrome mostly is X-linked, and I still remember a big family and come to me as the daughter in the big family. And she taught me in her family, her father, brother, and uncle all died. She taught me in her family almost no survival male, and he really would like to have a very healthy boy. And fortunately, after the prenatal diagnosis, he make a choice he get a good one. And also he asked me, can I let me think how to say, how about how to say, if he's his brother, younger brother, also the X-linked Alport syndrome, she asked me, her younger brother can get married, can he get a child? And if he gets a child, is healthy or not?
It's interesting to hear G talk about how a family with Alport syndrome began to chase where their gene lay and in what way it could affect members of their family.
I think it's really interesting to see how we can influence each other across countries. How can, some ideas that started in one place can be very useful. Like you saying, we learn from the UK, or you've been inspired from the service of genetics in Manchester. And now of course, there are differences also, cultural differences that, especially when we think about the impact on families, they will be values and principles of countries that, the cultures that they'll be different, and we need to probably adapt, even though we export or import ideas. And I'm just thinking, when we think about, we were calling that the voices from the future, we think about some of the things that are happening now. We go back to that COVID-19. We were wondering, Nicole and I, we were thinking about how to ask you about things that happened to you even some weeks ago in the department, or working in this context, that we might be starting to experience now, and whether we can pick up some of your experience so we are also better prepared in this case. Is this an okay question to ask?
If breaking it down might be easier, to just, first of all, how maybe it's affected you professionally, you and your team, what the last kind of couple of months have been like for you and your team at the hospital or colleagues. And then perhaps we move into how that's possibly affected how you might have changed some parts of your life personally. Because I know for me, how I've been affected professionally has actually really made me think a lot about changes that I'm going to make personally when this is all over. And, you know.
Okay, so I can tell you it's just the story in Beijing and also in our hospital. As you know, Beijing, the situation in Beijing is much different from Wuhan and Hubei. It's totally different. And also our hospital is also different from the others, because I also talked to the doctors working the other hospital. But at least I know our hospital is a general hospital. That's one thing. The other thing is our hospital located just one street across the Zhongnanhai. Tao, would you help me? But the central government, they live just one street cross.
Oh, okay.
So very close. So I think that's at least there's two reasons. So our hospital is very strictly. I mean, when we see patient or something about how to prevent the COVID-19 is so strictly. So at first, the hospital only what we call the fever clinic. If people have fever, they have to go to the clinic. They cannot go to the general hospital, general clinics. And especially in our pediatric department, we have a separate area. And that area is only for patients. If they get fever, they go to there. Whatever is respiratory disease, or maybe you have diarrhea and you have fever, you have to go to the fever clinic. And in the fever clinic, they isolate very well, and they will ask you epidemiology history. And if they wonder you have some epidemiology history, maybe you contact for some suspected patient, then they will take, the swab to do the test. And also they will ask you to do the CT scanning. So in China, CT is so popular. Right. And for the other disease, for example, the other clinic, and in at least in these 2 months, the other city come to Beijing, and they only can see the outpatient clinic. They cannot directly go to the inpatient. They have to isolate 14 days. And then if the disease is necessary, they go to the inpatient department. And also in inpatient department, before we have 3 people in one room, 2 people in one room, and sometimes maybe 6 people in one room. But nowadays, 1 people in one room. So that means before, for example, in our department, before we have 200 beds, at least we can get 200 patients. But nowadays, we maybe only have 90, 70, something like that. Right. So not many people, not many patients. And the other thing is the doctor restriction. If you're working in the outpatient department, you cannot directly go to the inpatient department. So physically separate.
Okay. Yeah.
Just in case. Yeah. Otherwise, the hospital get infection, and then the hospital have to close.
How is everybody doing? How is that kind of affecting you?
Let me finish tell you the other thing. That's I just tell you how the hospital do. How do our hospital do? And the other thing is the patient. The patient have if they it's okay, then they stay home and take medicine, because a lot of chronic disease, and some of them they take risk, come to the hospital, and also we also provide I think at least twice internet medicine. It's called internet medicine. We use the a special internet service, and to announce the patient, because the patient, they have their group. And also we use the public media to tell people what time we'll give those kind of the surveys, how you come in, how you assess in. And I think once a day we have the head of the nurse and me and the other 6 doctors, we all together to answer, I think, at least 200 questions. You know, they really face some problem. They need help. So we provide those kind of the help for free, because we think they really need that. So our doctor sit home or maybe sit in the office and to connect via the internet with patient. Yeah.
That's incredible, to give the patients that voice and that time. You know, they get that opportunity. It must be exhausting for you all, but to get that opportunity for the patients to, that's, you know, it's quite simple, but to be able to just explain how you're feeling and give symptoms, that's a really interesting way of doing it.
Okay, now I back to answer you what's my feeling. I really feel, you know, how to say, I scared at the very beginning, and later I think, it can be, you know, can controlled, and especially after a couple of months, a couple of weeks, and in our hospital we screen, you know, several one. We didn't diagnose one, so we think it's safe. And also, you know, the public media always tell us, you stay home. That's the big contribution for the society. Yeah. So, and the other thing is, the good thing is we have a cell phone, we have a computer. So for me, you know, I think, in that time I just finished my book writing and my student thesis, because I have 3 students graduate this year. So yeah, so something like that. So it's okay. It's okay.
I think that'll be very reassuring. No, I think that'll be really reassuring for our staff over here who are going through what you know, they're a little bit further behind, but they're wondering what the future looks like. And I think there's a lesson in that. I think I found that just stopping for a little while anyway has actually had a positive impact on me and my family, and you know, and obviously there's the initial feelings of being scared and vulnerable, but actually once you're in, it gives a lot of time. I did have over expectations, and I was going to write all kinds of things, and I've obviously not done that. But I think all of us had that, didn't they? We'll do our PhDs from home, and we'll write that book.
That's right.
Yeah, and I think it's important to also be a bit more kind of self-care and think, okay, we might just relax a little bit too and stop.
That's right. That's true. That's true. Yeah.
We also would like to ask you, I don't know whether I'm jumping a bit here, Nick, but if there is any special skill or some new ability that you've been discovering in the last few months, because you've been doing things differently, like you were saying, phone calls and being at home a bit more in a different way. Is there any special thing that you discover about yourself as a doctor, but also as a person, maybe?
For me, I think, you know, because it's already more than 2 months actually. I really think before I work so hard from morning to night, I think sometimes maybe it's not necessary. Some meeting maybe not necessary. That's true. That's true, you know, because now you cannot sit together, so you cancel a lot of meeting, you know. And before, almost every weekend, I will go out of town and to give lectures, have meetings. Now I'll stop. It's okay, you know.
Yeah. Wow.
I think you have more time to thinking, to sit down. Yeah. It's good. But I think sometimes a slow down is good. But not by the pandemic, I hope.
It's a
shame.
It's a shame it was the pandemic that's teaching us that. And I think it'll be interesting to see whether we remember how we forget that when we go back, when the pandemic's finished and we go back to our lives. It'd be interesting to see, because at the moment, I think I'm going back with different ideals and ways of living. And it'd be really interesting to see how quickly that wears off, or whether we keep a little bit of that feeling of slowing down and cutting out things.
This is obviously different from families that they are going through difficult times. You know, I would like to say that we've been thinking about the families that they are living with rare conditions. I am very connected to my brother. I have a brother whose daughter has been born with Dennis-Drush syndrome, DDS.
Yes, I know.
My brother has given her his kidney, and in these last months and weeks, the whole family, we are very aware that, especially for them, it's very important that people stay at home, because if she would get anything, she's 4, it would be very hard for her, we suppose.
For Mariangel's brother and his family, living through COVID-19 can bring a real sense of fear. This will be true for many of us who are living with a rare condition through these incredibly strange and uncertain times. So I think, and I can't believe I'm going to be the one that says this, but I think time-wise, we might be having to wrap up soon. I would love to talk for a lot longer, but something that we usually do is that we ask our guests to sum up their thoughts about the word rare, and it could be anything. This one, just because it's slightly different circumstances and we're in the middle of it at the moment, we were going to suggest that each of us kind of came up with a word that kind of explained how currently, or even during the past, or COVID-19, the effect that that's had on our life. So for me, that one word would be, well, it's actually 2 words to be fair, but it's be patient. So I have to keep saying to myself, be patient. And that's in a lot of areas. That's having my 2 children at home all the time, and my husband at home all the time. So I'm trying to juggle. So I have to keep saying, be patient. And we wondered, G, whether there's a word that you've gone to a lot over the last kind of couple of months that's helped you through this.
用一句话来
说这个上2个月的感受是吧？
对，
是感受吗？是感受是吗？
应该是这个，不管是感受了还是这个情况了，你最想说的是什么？可能是。
It might not be translatable.
我想一想怎么去
We hope you are enjoying the podcast so far. Please subscribe, rate and review. Continue to follow our conversations where we discover that rare means different things to different people.
Thank you, Paul. Now I understand. But actually, a lot of things too, because you have time to think about. So
of course.
But if let me to, or maybe the first that come to my mind, maybe in that way is better. The first that comes to my mind, or how you think about the last month, I will see. Well, I see life is important. Life is important. Another thing is always a positive, always or maybe this other thing is keep hope. Keep hope, right? Yeah, keep hope, because every morning also, you wake up, you see the blue guy, so
off the top of your head, that's perfect. Thank you so much. Mariangel's, have you got one? You can't get out of it, Mariangel's. You have to think of something as well.
Yeah, well, for me, it was the hope one, to keep hope. It would have been my but if you don't let me repeat, is keep remembering what I know, which is when you go through hard times, we forget what we know. So I also need to remind myself, I know how to do that. I know how to keep going. I know things. As we mentioned at the beginning, I'm going to bring narrative methodologies to continue the conversation. So I'm going to start with Jay, if that's okay, Jay. To ask you if there was any particular expression or something that G said today that will stay with you, that caught your attention and you would like to tell us.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's just been really interesting sort of listening through all of the conversations today.
Yeah.
There was one bit that just literally just like almost like little bell went off in my head as G was talking, which was when you were giving the story about the adolescent son,
Mm-hmm.
and the whole fact, it kind of resonates with me and some of the conversations kind of we've had about sort of our history and our family, and kind of just understanding how people, you know, completely in a different country are kind of going through that same kind of, you know, almost like distancing between, you know, one generation to another, and how people handle it in a very, very different way. So what exactly she said that you kind of, yeah, I think it was just really interesting to sort of hear the story of how all of a sudden, you know, this young lad kind of opened up and started having a really sort of quite emotional conversation.
Mm.
You know, you talk about sort of how, you know, how long have I got? How, you know, am I going to be dying? And all of that kind of thing. And up to the point when, you know, you're actually talking to him,
yeah,
you know, all of this had been sort of, you know, kept inside, and you know, not necessarily, you know, just because of that's how it had been, you know, sort of approached by the parents, and it just has resonated so much with, you know, sort of how things should be, you know, by talking. It makes things so much better.
And it resonates with your story and with your family. People who's not seen the podcast when you are being interviewed with your wife, they can go and listen, because this is really interesting and it's connected. But also, you were saying something about this international thing, and you know, similar stories happening in other parts of the world. And I'm just wondering, what will you take from this conversation? How this conversation with G would make a difference to you? This little bit about the adolescent, how will it stay with you?
I think it's the fact that you know, this has happened thousands of miles away, and actually we're all going through the same thing. For me, that's the thing. You know, we're all people, and no matter where we are and what backgrounds we've got or anything like that, it's you know, it's a connection with, you know, just people. You know, we're all people.
Thank you. That's really interesting. Thank you. I wonder whether Tao would like to go next, and I'll ask you the same thing, really, whether there was any particular thing of what G said that stayed with you.
Yeah, okay. I think, so today we're using Zoom to bring people, our colleagues and people together, even Jading from Beijing. And now I really think how important and useful our collaboration between Manchester and Beijing, China is. So without this platform, we won't be able to get together and discuss rare disease. People from 1,000 miles away. So that's really, I feel it's my privilege to initiate and be able to initiate and coordinate this collaboration. But also I would like to thank our colleagues in Manchester Center for Genomic Medicine for their great contribution, including our geneticists and genetic counselors and lab scientists, and establish that learning course. I know Lauren spent too much effort to establish this course. I really think I should carry on to put effort to strengthen our collaboration, basically. Yeah, thanks, JD.
Tao, it's so interesting you're saying that. It looks like it's also a personal thing, that it's been, by being here today, you feel encouraged to do more of this collaboration. Is this what you're saying?
Oh, definitely. I think this without our collaboration, we won't be able to get together today.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
we, apart from this sort of meeting, actually there are many other things. Especially we have classes of students in China. We're still looking after the initiation of the postgraduate teaching program, and Lauren contributed to establish it. Yeah, I think it's very important.
Thank you. It is an honor to see you all here in a way, because it represents different things for all of us, but I guess for you it's an important
support contribution from Peking University Health Science Center and the first hospital, and where Jay works, and her team and the other colleagues.
So what do you imagine doing next in relation to that, even if it's a small thing? What kind of a small thing you imagine doing next after we finish today?
We planned a lot. When we initiated this collaboration, we thought we'll do collaborative research, collaborative training, education, clinical trials. But now we couldn't do everything without finance support and other support. So actually we've been doing very well, especially this teaching program. So our reputation, actually, Manchester Genetic have already been in China. So the next, we really want to start doing a research collaboration. So that's have already been on the agenda, research collaboration on rare disease.
Thank you. Thank you, Tao. Thank you for all of your help here today. So I'm going to ask you, Lauren, and it's the same. It could be anything about the big thing, but it could also be a small thing from the conversation that you were touched by, or you were inspired, or sparkled something on you.
So I guess I was struck in the conversation by starting with Jay's description of the same family that Jay referred to with the 13-year-old child, but particularly about how the parents, in their presumably protectiveness and love, were not enabling him to be part of the conversation until he offered that. And it made me think, and Nicola came in at that point identifying with that and understanding that about how parental ideas and views and concern can have such a big impact on children, and how they need to move away from that. And so immediately you think, well, here we are in an international discussion at a time of an international pandemic. That's the tautology, international pandemic. And that, those are the things that bring us together. But then a few minutes later, Jiding talked about how a difference in perhaps our culture here and in China to do with attitudes to psychology and psychologists. And so that made me think about this differences and similarities and what takes precedence. And it reminded me that when we first went over to start teaching, Jiding invited a group of us initially before the training program to speak to a large crowd of doctors from all across China about genetic counseling. And we were very, very concerned. And before we went, we spoke to Tao quite a bit, because we thought a lot of issues that relate to genetic counseling just may be so different in a culture, in a different culture. Attitudes to pregnancy and tests in pregnancy, attitudes to families and the way families communicate. So we were very, very conscious of that. And I remember in my talk putting up a slide towards the end about, potential differences in culture, but then something about my own experience internationally teaching and collaborating, that probably the similarities in the way we as human beings respond to rare disease and its impact in our families, there are way more similarities. So it was really interesting to see that illuminated in the conversation today. And I would want to underline that. And of course, it also relates to how we're all facing the same threats for this rare situation of COVID-19 around the world.
So it looks like this is not really a new thing. It's almost like a thing that you kind of could experience again in the conversation. And I'm just wondering where this will take you in the next few days. What will be for you, having been in this conversation, having noticed again, that we are way more similar than not similar, and that what can be, how can be this an important thing for you in the next few hours or days?
For me personally?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I just think that it's that feeling connected.
Yeah.
Starts with people near to us, but it continues to people far away. And in this current situation, we're reading every day about how people are managing in China and how they're managing in Italy and in Spain and the United States and everywhere. And so I think it's really just that it underlines that that connectivity more than differences. And if I can say that, in a few of you have talked about how maybe there could be positive things that come out of this terrible time. And one of those might be a reconnecting to the idea that we're not all in separate little places around the world, and that we shouldn't be feeling those differences, and that we should be recognizing the similarities and learning from, groups of doctors from China going to Italy to help them with their experience. I mean, that was really moving after what they'd all been through and traveling through. So it's just connecting to all of that, just underlines that for me. It's been a great conversation to be a part of. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to our podcast today. It has been quite a new experience for us to record our conversation online so that we can all stay at home. It's been really interesting for me to hear Jay talk about her work with rare conditions and reflect on her experience of the effects of COVID-19. We've encouraged more narrative principles into this episode, and it'll be interesting to hear from our listeners where this conversation has left you today. What have you taken from Jay's experiences and the response from our witnesses? It would be great as always to carry on this conversation, and you can find us in our usual place on Apple Podcasts and our website rare-d.com, or tweet us at Whitworth Group. Thank you so much for listening.